It's my pleasure to present my colleague from the University of Valencia, Esther Linares Bernabéu. Esther started her predoctoral training with us, with Greale, within the first Prometeo project, and in a few years, she became a really outstanding researcher on topics such as gender and humor, stand-up comedy, and su investigación, voy a pasar ahora al español porque su investigación se desarrolla en ambas lenguas, tanto en inglés como en español. Sería muy largo enumerar todos los trabajos que en estos pocos años, todas las contribuciones de Esther durante esos pocos años, desde que está en el ámbito de investigación, pero quisiera destacar, aparte de sus publicaciones en revistas de altísimo impacto como Signos, como Suffrag, como Humour, también volúmenes colectivos que ha editado ella, Gender and Identity in Humorous Discuss, publicado en Peter Lang, o muy reciente, su monográfico, el monólogo humorístico subversivo en español, pragmática, humor verbal y construcción discursiva del género, publicado en Iberoamericana Fair. Con todo esto, today's talk is devoted to these topics too, and it's entitled, let's see, Co-construction, humor, and gender identity in live stand-up comedy. So, Esther, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the introduction, Dr. Timofeva. It's a pleasure to present my paper, Co-constructing Humor and Gender Identity in live stand-up comedy, in which I'll try to evidence how stand-up comedians encourage the audience to respond and comment in order to make them feel part of the performance, to catch their attention, and to ensure there is a mutual shared knowledge between them and the audience before introducing a new topic. So this is how I've structured my presentation. I begin by introducing the purpose of this study, as well as what hypotheses I aim to corroborate. Next, in the theoretical framework, we'll present some of the key concepts and basic theories which our research is based on. That is the discursive genre of stand-up comedy, the concept of kairos, and the important role of interaction with the audience. Thirdly, we will present our methodological instruments that we have used to collect the corpus for data extraction. The next section will be dedicated to a quantitative and qualitative analysis, along with the discussion of the results obtained. And finally, the presentation will conclude with a reflection on the current state of the topic and future lines of research. So let's get started. As we already saw yesterday, interactional humor includes spontaneous genres that are developed with the communicative immediacy of the here and now. And likewise, it also covers genres which, despite planning and the lack of interactional dynamism, are also based on a series of sequences in which humor is produced and negotiated together. In fact, in live comedy, it is hard to imagine a comic effect without a reaction from the audience. Similarly, it would be difficult to see how narration in the sequences may progress if the stand-up comedian does not receive any kind of response. Consequently, in this research, I will try to demonstrate the crucial role the audience has in how successful the stand-up comedian will be. Since although it may seem that producing comedy merely concerns one person talking, it is actually a conversation in which the audience is fundamental, and is required to take an active role. In particular, in this study, I analyzed kairos in comedy and the role the audience has in live acts. So my research follows on the proposal by Ruiz Burillo, who demonstrated that performing this type of discourse entails a conversational register, since the comedian invites the audience to participate with their comments and questions. Likewise, stand-up comedy represents a planned discourse that sometimes is used as a tool for resistance and confrontation. Therefore, I begin with the hypothesis that the interactive register in the stand-up comedy is an argumentative technique used by comedians to connect with the audience, even when controversial or subversive social topics are tackled. Likewise, I think that constructing gender identity by means of this type of discourse is conditioned by the type of interaction with the audience, as well as by the knowledge the comedian shares with them. And this was already corroborated by Metejewski, who confirmed that stand-up comedians adapt their scripts to fit the audience attending the performance in order to involve them by way of kairos. Unlike other types of discourse, such as colloquial conversation or opinion articles, humor is a fundamental and essential feature of stand-up comedy, as already Sakona stated in 2017. However, obviously, to achieve a successful humorous effect, good materials and careful planning on how it will be structured is needed. In this sense, it should be mentioned that the live stand-up comedy that we are studying, which is set in different venues and theaters, does not have the prototypical structure of introduction, body, and ending. Unlike, for example, in the stand-up comedy acts that are represented or shown on television. In fact, live comedy is organized in a prior alternative fashion, and therefore its heterogeneous structure blurs the lines between the different parts. However, Rata in 1977 asserts that despite its emphasized nature, the different stages in the stand-up performance can be identified. Firstly, there is an introduction in which the comedian introduces herself. Afterwards comes the section in which the comedian addresses the audience to greet them and to provide some indication about how the performance is going to proceed. And due to this initial intervention, she establishes the register or interactive style, which will be used throughout the performance and attracts also the audience. Next, in the middle, the body of the stand-up act, we can find a series of humor sequences, and we understand humor sequence as a series of jab lines and punch lines, terms basically, which revolve around a specific topic and which are interrupted by laughter, applause, or even comments from the audience. In general, these sequences are made up of a setup and a punchline. In the setup, that is the introduction and the development of the sequence, certain tension and expectations are created, which subsequently are resolved in the ending of the punchline. We agree with Fons insofar as the punchline must be original and unpredictable, since if the audience can predict how it ends, it means that the comedian is on par with the audience in terms of wit and sharpness, and therefore does not have enough authority as a comedian. And just like its structure, another essential element for the performance to be successful is the comic persona the stand-up comedian develops on a stage. In this type of oral genre, the comedian presents her point of view and talks in first person to make her discourse more believable. And the construction of the comic persona is a process which consolidates, of course, the more performances the comedian has. And in this respect, her archetypical personality is successfully built when she develops a clear and coherent archetypical humorous style, in which some of her personal details are consciously reflected. To be specific, two fundamental rhetorical aspects of the comic persona of the stand-up comedian are ethos and kairos. Due to the conversational nature of live comedy, the comic establishes her ethos, while she negotiates the kairos. The latter reflects the opportunities that arises in a certain situation to talk or keep quiet according to the audience feedback, so as to ensure her punchlines have maximum effect. The ethos of this comic persona encourages the audience to respond to her intervention by laughter and authorizes her and her audience also to share a moment of immunity to deal with controversial topics in a humorous way. And moreover, negotiating kairos, it also implies having the capacity to adapt the material according to the local context, so that the audience identifies it and feels part of the show. And beyond humorous competence and the concepts of recognition, appreciation, negotiation that were put forward by Hay in 1995, continued humor and the reactions to humor have been little examined in the field of formal linguistic research. In this respect, I feel that the stand-up comedy is a text genre which could help the pragmatic study of interactional humor, since humor is co-constructed by means of the different humorous sequences the discourse is made up of. In fact, Bell and Gibson in 2011 and Doe in 2018 state that in live comedy, the reactions from the audience are key to show how the humor act progresses. And the fact that research on stand-up comedy has often been focused on the discourse given by the comedian does not mean that the reactions from the audience are not just as important in terms of how the show continues. In accordance with Chovanec and Chacona 2018, the reactions to humor are significant since they show whether the audience have understood a message or not, and whether they have given it a positive or a negative appraisal by means of laughter, smiling, facial expressions, etc. Of course, whether the reactions are positive or negative in this type of interactions will depend on correlational elements such as the gender or age of the audience, the state of subordination or equality, superiority, etc. Also, of course, depending on the number of listeners and the degree of spontaneity in this type of discourse. So in the following analysis, we will see how stand-up comedians use some or other comic resources depending on the reactions of the audience. We will see also how they select and negotiate a series of rhetorical pragmatic strategies and use certain humorous language when interacting with the audience in order to adapt to the specific situational and sociocultural context. As a result, the study of these interactions in live performances has been undertaken by contextualized and representative samples. To be specific, in this research, the themes of corpus is analyzed. It covers a total of 15 stand-up acts compiled by me, the author, in 2017 and 2018 from different venues and theaters on Spanish territory. These acts were represented by 15 comedians from the spectrum of the contemporary comedy in Spain, and each of the acts was transcribed into humorous sequences. And in this respect, I transcribed 504 sequences by following the Valesco transcription system, and this came to a total of 760 minutes, that is 13 hours and 25 minutes of recording, and 97,749 words transcribed. So our analysis focuses on the corpus sequences in which there is feedback from the audience by means of responses or comments to the previous intervention by the comedian. And in this respect, the results reveal that in 113 sequences, that is the 22% of the humorous sequences of the themes of corpus, there is a direct interaction, a direct feedback with the audience. And this is a rather high number, bearing in mind the characteristics of this text genre analyzed. However, the data can be explained within their communicative context, as these acts are performed in an informal context, mainly at small theaters and venues where there is proximity with the audience. However, the percentage of these comedians resort to direct dialogue with the audience in their sequences is significantly uneven, as it's reflected in the chart. This is due to the various factors such as the humorous style each comedian has, the predisposition of the audience attending the specific show, and the sociocultural features, as well as the metapragmatic competence the audience has to adapt. So the discourse according to the responses given by the audience. So we can see here, for instance, that Patricia Sornosa would be the one that has more interactions with her audience, while Pilar de Francisco or Eva Cabezas almost don't have any. Likewise, in the study of direct interactions with the audience has led to the conclusion that there are three main functions in this type of dialogues. namely stimulating the audience to participate, which appears in 43% of the cases, checking shared knowledge that is fulfilled in 27% of the sequences, attracting attention that appears in 24 of these direct dialogues. And also, I have seen that occasionally in 6% of the sequences, the comedians not only are the ones that encourage participation, but rather it is the audience who decides to intervene and interrupt her discourse in order to contribute an idea or opinion. That's the case of the hecklers. So as we saw in the last chart, the most of the sequences in which the comedians resort to direct dialogue have a function of making the audience participate and to involve them. So this can be seen in the following sequence, in which the comedian Susi Caramelo attempts to involve the audience. She does this by asking whether there is anyone else in the room who suffers from the same disorder, pivonexia, that is the belief that you are more attractive than you actually are. And she does, and encourages them to put their hands up and participate in the performance. She says, "I've been diagnosed as having pivonexia. Hey, is there anyone else in the room who is pivonexic? Yes? Well, okay. I think it's a good time to bring up the topic. Is there anyone else in the room who is pivonexic? Then put your hand up and say, hey, I also think I'm hot. Maybe between all of us, we'll burst your bubble and you'll go home cured. What do you think? Pivonexia is a difficult disorder to treat. It's a real pain when sometimes I'm in the middle of a meeting and suddenly I will rush to a bathroom without even making an excuse. And I'll spend hours there until somebody finally comes and says, Susana, are you okay? And so I say, I know. So in this example, we see how the comedian Susi Caramelo orchestrates this sequence by means of the concept pivonexia, a term that she herself has made up as if it were some type of illness or disorder. And in this respect, the humorous effect is produced as the audience can link the cognitive spaces the comedian has combined. That is the adjective pivon, that describes the physical attractive woman, and the suffix exia, which is an indicative of a disorder. So in fact, blending is a very common resource in humorous discourse. And with this, the comedian negotiates the kairos with the audience and takes advantage of the situation to strike up a direct dialogue with the attendants. She makes them feel as if they are participating in the show by asking them to admit that they too suffer from pivonexia, to which they respond with laughter and by raising their hands. Moreover, we saw that comedians occasionally ask the audience direct questions in order to confirm whether they share knowledge with them and thereby create a mutual cognitive space in the narration of the sequence. This can be seen in the second example, in which the comedian Raquel Sastre asks the audience a direct question in order to check whether those attending know who Hannibal Lecter is, and in this way can go with the humorous sequence. So she says, well, do you know who Ramon San Pedro is, don't you? I like him because the guy is Galician, but seems as though he's from Cadiz, because nothing makes him up. Okay, now we know who he is. Carrying on with cinema, do you know who Hannibal Lecter from The Silence of Lamb is? Yes. So if someone tells you, honey, I'm going to eat your cunt, the best thing you can do is get the hell out of there. Let's see how you like black humor. Do you know why Hannibal Lecter ate Ramon San Pedro? Because the doctor advised him to go on a diet to eat some vegetables. Well, once the audience responds positively, the stand-up comedian is aware that she shares knowledge with her audience and has also attracted the interest of the listeners. In this way, having confirmed that the audience is aware of the topic the joke revolves around, cannibalism, she develops a series of jab lines and punchlines in which she uses rhetorical pragmatic strategies, such as the discourse given in direct speech, to make it more plausible. Then in the next example, we can see how sometimes comedians exchange a few words with the audience to keep and maintain their attention. So in the following excerpt, the comedian Virginia Riezu attracts the attention of the audience by directly interacting with one listener, Natalia, as if it were an off-cut dialogue between both of them. So moreover, she encourages the member of the audience to applause as part of the show. Let's see how she does it. She says, and I was thinking I had to carry on and I had to pull this guy. He was going to be my boyfriend. That was the label I was going to give him. I was so wrong, Natalia, because my self-esteem started to flag. Look, he rushed out. Bye. Goodbye, dignity. See you later. Goodbye, self-love. Look how it runs. Look. And who stayed with me, Natalia? Hi, I'm your unconditional neuron. Come on, Virgie, carry on. You can still pull. Haha, why don't you ring him drunk at 5 o'clock in the morning and tell him how you feel about him? What a great idea. Call him drunk at 5 in the morning, send him a WhatsApp, no, an SMS, buy a wonder box and get together with him. Come on, you are very sexy. Hey, come on, Virginia. Well, in this example, the stand-up comedian resorts to her ethos to directly appeal to a member of the audience and to make her participate in the sequence. However, by placing herself as the butt of the joke, the audience does not feel their image is under attack and agree to participate. In fact, Virginia Riezu takes advantage of Kairos to capture the attention of the audience and to encourage feedback from them by means of direct interaction in which she makes them shout her name repeatedly. So this time the comic effect is derived from involving a member of the audience in the sequence, as well as using indicators and human markers such as personification when she talks about dignity and self-love. This is also seen when she represents, of course, the neuron in direct speech. Then the last example is a case in which it's a heckler who interrupts the audience and tries to contribute with an idea or a comment on the humorous sequence. This type of heckling is another way of in which the audience can strike up a direct dialogue with the performer. And this type of intervention is very interesting since they make the comedian demonstrate her improvisation techniques and her capacity to respond and adapt to the interruption in a humorous way. This can be seen in the following sequence in which someone from the audience, a woman, interrupts Patricia Sornosa at the start of the joke about an event which had happened before in the sequence. She says, Patricia Sornosa, and I also write. Basically, that's what I do. And then, yes, because soundtracks. Are you saying I'm out of tune? Do you want a thumb, eh? I give you a hiding. What do you think about that? I'm just joking. I'm not going to give you a hiding, but you deserve a few smacks in the face. Well, here, in the fourth example, we see the interruption from a woman in the audience that tries to place the comedian as the butt of the joke. Therefore, she responds in this comment by using an aggressive, humorous style. Here, there is no risk of offending anyone since all the participants in the communicative act are in humorous mode and in fear that she has purely a humorous attitude. And likewise, the aggression shown by Patricia Sornosa is associated with male discourse. And in this way, she breaks with the traditional gender roles associated with femininity, and therefore clearly reflects the discursive construction of gender identity in stand-up comedy. So just some conclusions to finish. We have seen that the comedians from our corpus do not all manage Kairos in the same time, in the same way, since this depends on humorous style that they each have, on the predisposition also from the audience attending the show, as well as the sociocultural features and the metapragmatic competence of the comedian to adapt her discourse according to the responses given by the audience. Likewise, the analysis led us to conclude that the comedians encourage responses and comments from the audience for different reasons, to make them feel part of the sequence, an important part, to ensure there is a shared knowledge between the comedian and the audience before tackling a given topic, or to attract and maintain their attention. And likewise, I have seen that occasionally the comedian is not the one that encourages participation, but rather it is the audience themselves who decide whether to intervene and interrupt the discourse. So in short, we have corroborated the rhetorical argumentative power of direct dialogues with the audience as a way to bond with them and encourage collaboration between both parties. That would be everything. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Esther, for your so interesting and insightful talk. And now we have some minutes to comment, to questions. So I give the floor to the audience.
I think Galia had her hand up.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes?
perfectly.
Okay, thank you for a fascinating talk. There's not enough research on stand-up comedy, so it's a pleasure to find something so full. I was just wondering, it might be because the nature of your corpus is feminine comedians, but have you not found more heckling which produced negative results, the interaction with the audience being more confrontational after that? Because I have a student working on stand-up comedy, and with the male stand-up comedians, he did find cases like that. So I was just wondering.
Not in my corpus, unfortunately. I would like to have more acts collected. I want to increase it and also see other types of context like male stand-up comedy and different ones, because in my particular corpus, no, it was just 6% and not in an aggressive tone.
That is very interesting. It might have to do with the nature of the corpus of the female comedians. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. More questions?
There are some comments.
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the chat.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Muchas gracias.
Yeah. As
I
always.
have a question. Is there?
Pardon?
I have a question. Congratulations for your talk. I think it was very, very interesting with these female comedians and the kairos and ethos. This is very interesting. This framework from Greenbaum and the application in Spanish in these female comedians. I was wondering whether you could analyze maybe the evolution of this stand-up comedy in Spanish in some TV programs, like these TV programs from of Susi Caramelo or La Resistencia of David Broncano, in which the monologue, the stand-up comedy, is a bit different, and the register is more informal than in a stand-up comedy, because the comedians, for example, uses some informal clues, or they prefer to use an informal register with the.
I see what you mean.
Sequence.
Yeah, that could be a really good idea. In fact, these type of TV presenters also interact with the audience sometimes. They just move around, and with the mic, they ask the audience questions, and also the audience sometimes interrupts them like hecklers. So yeah, I hadn't thought about that idea, but it would be really, really interesting. Thank you very much for the suggestion. I just need more time.
There's a balance between the informal register and the planned discourse with the monologue.
So there's
interesting.
There's a question on the
chat. What about an intercultural analysis?
That's what I have to do.
Do you think about this?
Now I have to do like a contrastive research, as I'm part of the English department. I cannot only look at the Spanish samples. So yeah, that's my next task.
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. And there's a question.
I have a question, Jorge Cantó.
The analysis of the audience response to
During the analysis of the audience response to the comedian's performance, was the response measured during the same weekdays?
I don't really get what you mean, but I collected the corpus in different days and
I
different
guess like a
cases.
weekend or during the...
All right. No, it was mostly were weekends because it was my free day to go and collect the corpus. So yeah, they were mostly Fridays and Saturdays.
Any question? More? Sound great.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can give this. Right.